Hi there, everyone. This is Matt with the Grappling Podcast. And in this episode, Levi and I discuss some concepts that help us learn techniques. The general theme is around understanding why a specific move or grouping of moves works, so that way you can implement that principle into your training. If you enjoy this episode, please like it and share it with a friend. Now on to the pod.
Or we could do a jiu-jitsu cookbook.
Ooh, yeah. Make sure to berimbolo your steak after X amount of time.
Trust me, I was at Barnes & Noble the other day, and they had like the Witcher cookbook. They had World of Warcraft cookbook.
Izzy has an Avatar: The Last Airbender cookbook.
Oh, I think I saw
bought her that.
too.
It was
funny.
awesome.
But it's like themed, and people just eat that kind of stuff up. You know, it's like, oh, it's a whatever. Finn's got a D&D themed book too, and it's like, I think people just enjoy the novelty of it.
That'd be fun. Like, we actually, a couple years ago, we did a anime dinner.
Okay.
And we like made a big table on the ground and whatnot, and we made chaganobe.
Ah,
It's like
cool.
a sumo wrestler soup.
Mhm.
It's kind of time intensive, but really good for a group to make together because there's so many ingredients you cut up, and it was awesome. We had a lot of
That's
fun
a
with
cool
that.
idea.
And then Izzy made rice balls with salmon in them.
Sounds so good.
Yeah, I think I might do it again. I eventually do want to start doing those like dinner things together where we have having conversational topics.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to it.
I saw a meme, or a meme. It was like a video where a group of friends got together and they each did a PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint was like explaining their jobs to each other.
That's funny,
Something
actually.
like that. Like, you need something to pause for a second. Like, let me explain to you what I actually do.
That's funny.
I like that's kind of.
I didn't know what my
creative.
mom did for like years.
Oh, yeah?
I could like tell you she worked at JJ Keller, but I was like, I have no clue because I didn't understand like compliance and regulatory paperwork and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I didn't know too much of what my dad did with work when he worked at a paper mill, and then he was interviewed by NPR.
Oh, really?
About
That's
paper
cool.
mills, and then it was like the first time I was hearing him like not be my dad. Like now I'm framing him as a paper mill worker and
Paper mill guy.
Yeah, and the struggles that he was having and things like that with it. I'm like, stuff that I never heard or never seen.
that's
you know,
interesting.
it was eye opening for sure.
You and your dad have both been on public broadcasts now.
When have I been on public?
Remember you had the TV people here that one day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We were on TV.
I've been on TV a couple times.
That's cool.
Most of the time I got denied, or Jill and I got denied one because she was skipping work, and WLEK was doing something about lake recession by the water, and I really wanted to be on TV. And she's like, we can't, because otherwise,
Bro, you know we're recording this,
I know.
right?
There's her partner's like, I listen to my grappling podcast. But yeah, it was just funny because it was what I wanted to do was, because my brother at the time lived on Lake Michigan. I just wanted to randomly send him a video of his brother giving his opinion on lake recession. And I never lived on it, going, why is Levi talking about his opinion? Guess that's what they asked. They're like, do you want to give like your opinions on it? I'm like, sure, I'll do that. And she's like, no.
That's funny.
But I've been on a couple times. I don't mind the limelight if I can have it. Be wary.
So make a hard pivot.
Control.
Were you ever good at math in school?
No. I mean, just basic algebra. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, but
basic algebra was cool.
yeah.
You actually use that with Excel. That's actually like one of the helpful things, you know?
I was always the person that like I would give it 10 seconds and flip to the back of the book for the solution. It's
I only
like,
had all the evens.
oh, there it is. Okay, evens. I'm like, I'm good with that.
So, okay. I have a friend who is exceptional at math. He always has been as long as I've known him. He's so
Like savant level.
like so good, like competitive mathlete level. Like he incredibly good at math. And it was actually really cool. I didn't notice this till years later of like how well he actually understood math. Like once we were out of high school and I would ask him a question about something with math and he'd be like, oh, and he'd have the answer like right there, even though he hasn't learned about it in years because he had a conceptual understanding of how math worked.
Okay.
I thought that was really cool. So he could learn something, retain it, apply it to his system versus I would do like rogue memorization, right? Just to get me through to the next test. And yeah, I thought that was always really neat. And the fact that he understood the principles of how the formula worked, and that was how he was able to recall it and just be a super legit math dude. And I thought that was kind of a neat topic for today in terms of jujitsu, of talking about general tasks over specific tasks, and how having a general and broad understanding might actually help you be able to recall the information you want in a live role, or even just developing your game.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought it had a lot of parallels to jiu-jitsu and grappling in general. And I thought this would be a really good episode to do.
Isn't there some savants that like can hear color, or like not hear colors or hear numbers? Or
I've never heard of that.
Yep. Like it's like different numbers have different like flavors and smells to them. It's a real thing?
Oh, it's a thing?
Yeah.
They're not just like imagining
it's
a
like
flavor?
76 is like a...
Because I can tell you what blue tastes like. Blue Gatorade, baby. That's the flavor of blue.
No, it's a real thing. It's like a way that it's like how these, ultra level savants work. Like it's not just like you said about memorization. It's like they almost see it differently. It's like how their brain's wired. Like it's just they experience these extrasensory things in a different way, like geometrically or whatever. I mean, you get those kid savants who are like 7 or 8 years old and they can do high level math. It's like it's literally brain chemistry at that point.
Wouldn't that be crazy if you could go to a doctor and be like, "Can you connect the thing so I'm good at math?" I'm just magically good at math.
I feel like if everything's going its way, like in 50 years, we're going to be like cyborgs where you can pay for upgrades for your experience.
Easily.
I want the eagle eyes. Cool. That'll be $100.
Bionic legs.
Sweet.
Give me the bionic legs. So I can
it's going to be something for sure. I mean, imagine like a Matrix thing where you're just downloading information like world history done. And then you're just like, oh yeah, it's a battle of whatever.
I think there's going to be some lameness with that though. Because like jiu-jitsu, the whole thing we talk about is the travel, the journey, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the experience of it. And you're going to rob yourself of so many experiences because you're just going to go cheat code. I
wonder if that would be like
that's going to cause massive, I feel like, depression.
But maybe people will like find...
So you get that happiness upgrade,
Yeah. I wonder if people will find their way towards those kind of things because information is so accessible. But I mean, you think about it, I think maybe that's the way everyone dives into hobbies these days because we are external cyborgs with like the internet at our fingers and Google at our fingers. Like
it does help you develop your hobbies better.
We can do right now and just say whatever battle you want and go, okay, that's X date and this place. Like we have it very accessible versus having like 20 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
I think having like an encyclopedia in your head would be okay. Yeah. I'm just thinking of how much people work to then be able to do their hobbies. Yeah. Like it's kind of hobbies and loved ones are really the reason because I think that we tend to want to exist, and taking that away is going to make that kind of rough.
I think that would be different, like having a skill acquisition versus maybe something that just affects your memory.
Like imagine everybody can you come to Theory Jiu-Jitsu, you get the download, now you know Jiu-Jitsu. But now you don't have the community, you don't have the hardship together, you don't have that experience. True. Give me the bionic limbs and stuff.
Yeah.
But just then if maybe we could get some throwaway limbs out here and you could really roll.
Fight like anime characters.
Yeah, and really break your fake arm and then just put a new one on or have it repair itself.
I always thought that with like My Hero Academia or whatever other animes where it's like they break their arm and they have some like healing person that can just pop things in place or whatever. I'm like, imagine if that was
Harry Potter style.
Yeah, but that was easy. Like you have a completely
we would have
arm.
a Madame Pomfrey here.
Just be like,
yeah, give me that spell. Give me that spell. No, Matt, this is the fourth time you broke your arm this week.
We're upping your cost.
Yeah. But, kind of jumping back to the topic. So what do we mean by understanding general goals of an outcome to be more effective at specific tasks?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give an example of this before we dive any deeper because I think it'll help paint the picture, because the people who are listening already who know and understand what we're talking about, they already got it, right? But It's actually the people who are newer to jiu-jitsu that this might be a big light bulb moment for them.
I still think there's a lot of experienced people that see jiu-jitsu through technique-based.
Yeah.
Like traversing through jiu-jitsu versus task-based.
You don't think it just kind of like over time they...
No.
Because like, really? Okay. I guess my interpretation was like, okay, a sweep, right?
It's like if someone was teaching you how to skateboard at a skate park and just over the years and time, you just pick stuff up, but no one ever told you...
I used to skateboard.
But the reason why something flips or the reason why you cut these angles, like a certain concept, you just pick it up. So there's an intuitiveness about it, but maybe they couldn't like teach that intuitiveness to somebody else.
I see what you're saying. So I took it as the way of that they had to go step 1, grab this, step 2, grab that.
But it's this intuitiveness, like I think that's where people fail as instructors and teachers. Like we're immersed with it in so long that like English, like could you take someone and teach them English within 6 months to be somewhat fluid?
I'm not an English teacher.
Right, but it's saying like how you'd have to.
I think a person could learn English pretty well in 6 months, speaking wise.
Oh, I'm saying like for you to say I'm going to be the one teaching you English.
Oh boy, they'd
right?
be in for a rough time.
Well, but you could speak it very well. So having someone who does jiu-jitsu very well doesn't mean that they can translate that skill over to a brand new person.
Then again, I've taught 2 humans how to speak.
Have you though? Have you just had Avatar up or something like that?
Yeah. Me and my television have taught 2 humans how to speak.
That's funny.
But no, so I guess I have had a hand in teaching somebody how to speak.
It's true.
But yeah, I don't teach them how to like do like the structure of it. They just pick it up intuitively.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to jump into an example of what the heck I'm talking about here and what we're pointing towards. So let's take an example of a sweep. And I've been doing a little bit more butterfly guard lately, so I'm going to use that because I think it's a really good example on the concepts we're going to be talking about in this example. So all butterfly sweeps that I can think of require you to trap one of their arms, right? And every technique that you have for a sweep from butterfly guard, at some point there is some arm trappage going on, and that could be either from you hug their arm in with them, you do a 2-on-1 kind of grip, you do a shoulder crunch, you do an overhook, you know maybe even underhook and lift really high. Like the point is that you have to trap the arm you're sweeping to. Mm-hmm. How you get there's just a bunch of different options depending on the scenario and what you're trying to do. So that would be like a very general thing to say is like you just got to trap one of their arms. And then the other side of it is you got to get your hook on their thigh, turn to your side or slightly to your back, and lift them up. Mm-hmm. And that's literally every single butterfly sweep that at least I can think of with my blue belt knowledge. So I might have I guess, do you have an example where that falls apart?
As far as a sweep is concerned.
For a butterfly sweep.
No, I mean, because with the butterfly guard, there's the ability for your opponent to have all posts at all time. Like you can put your hands on the ground, you can put your feet on the ground because you just have inside position. So to take away a post, I mean, to isolate it, it's kind of this common concept where it's like you need to bring limbs across the body to be able to make it difficult. But yeah, I mean, Kit Dale had something like that too, was talking about sweeps with something similar like that. Like you have to take a post out.
Yeah, you take an arm out.
Take an arm out. You have to find ways to get someone flipped over.
So I use that example as one option for people when they're going, okay, well, what are you talking about when you mean general tasks over specific moves? Mm-hmm. I'm not, by the way, throwing any shade on specific moves. I think they're great. It's a best practice distilled from someone else saying, hey, to trap somebody's arm, I found this to work really, really well. And then they show you, the type of grip or whatever it is.
All techniques, in my opinion, are manifested solutions for overcoming tasks. Like what's the best way to accomplish this task? It's this movement. Well, if this movement, we do it over and over again, then suddenly we'd give a name to it. We give like a categorization to it.
Yeah, you're right.
We call it the knee slice. So the knee slice is this movement that we perform that allows us to get to the hip line on our partner. And then over time, people figure out some other ways like, oh, here's Nicky Ryan. Well, we call this the high step. So the high step is we turn and we pivot that foot on the inside. Now it lands to the outside hip, and that makes it effective for us to do so. So the techniques is just people, if you're talking about guard passing, for example, then people say, what are good techniques for guard passing?
That's a big
and then you're like, okay, well, here's Toreando. Here's the knee slice. Like here's ways to do the guard pass. But again, someone might even get like a further definition of like, what is a guard pass? Well, it's getting around their legs. Okay.
And their frames.
And their frames and making chest-to-chest contact and hip line connection, all that stuff. But these are these things where when we understand why these techniques work so well, then that gets a little more, like we started talking about tasks specifically or generalization. Now in the midst of rolling, they understand, here's my task I need to accomplish.
Yeah.
So even in
the
midst of chaos, like you're trying to do a knee slice or whatever, and they're freaking out, they're framing you or whatever, as long as you have that generalized task in your mind, you can maneuver their body away, and you might end up doing a different technique or a different solution that is actually a more popularized method for accomplishing that task. And we call it the Toreando. We call it whatever. Like, you did the thing, which is an effective way to accomplish that task. But do you tell it to new people right away? It's that conversation that Greg Souders has. Like, Greg Souders doesn't call things techniques. He just gives, he gives like the generalized task, right? Which we're talking about, like the task to accomplish. And then the body organizes itself to accomplish that task.
I think there's value there, but I'll admit I have some thoughts on that where I'm like, I agree that there's a huge amount of value in training people with that, including that into your curriculum, at least from like a learning side of things. But when someone's like really new and they're paying you to learn jujitsu,
right,
or grappling in general, I feel like you got to deliver something it's kind of like if you owned a gym, you have a guy come in and they say, yeah, I want to, lose some weight. You know what you're going to do in that first workout, regardless of what they told you they want to do? You're doing arms, baby.
Yeah.
Because you need them coming back. Because that's what will actually get them to keep coming to the gym. They'll see their arms get bigger. And a lot of guys, who especially have never trained before, they want big arms. They really...
That's a cool mind frame with that.
Yeah. And also the same thing, you can reverse this for ladies. They want quads, hams, and booty. So like, no matter what a person tells you, there's also the thing that like their expectation of what they're going to get. So you got to give them some of that, but you also got to give them some of what they actually need. You got to kind of balance that, I feel like, and then also have them leave with going, hey, I got results towards my goal. And sometimes that might mean teaching them a knee slice, right? Because then they go, cool. That was so neat. And I think at first we can go, learning the specific steps of something is actually important. When you first start walking, it's the same way. It's like one step in front of the other. First you got to learn how to get on your hands and knees. Like there's a whole process there. And then eventually you don't think about walking anymore because you don't have to. But at first it was a very like mental thing.
I will give a very interesting analogy. I've been watching this YouTube channel lately. They was talking about how people develop games for like game developments, like Dark Souls and all this kind of stuff. Like how people create games. And on top of that, how you keep people engaged with games.
Oh, I think I've heard this.
Yeah. So, the example though is that in the beginning with like why some games tutorials are really bad, to say like, let's say an Age of Empires type thing or something like huge like that. Like there's all these buttons and all these tactics to learn in order to just start playing the game. And it's like overwhelming.
I felt that way with Baldur's Gate at first, honestly, because there's all the wheels and the bumpers. Now I can like fly through it.
But something like, let's say Dark Souls, for example, the whole thing with Dark Souls is that like Dark Souls 3, you face this gigantic boss right away with still a very, very, very loose framework of how anything even works. And you have to like find your way and develop your skill sets to take down this big boss right away.
Something I love about Dark Souls.
On your own. But this is where it gets interesting because what happens, Matt, is that when you look at gameplay, they say people who play games have either an intrinsic motivation or extrinsic motivation. Games that like, let's say Call of Duty or, anything else that have like achievement based, of accomplishing based, like people will start games out going for those extrinsic motivations. They want to accomplish the thing. So when you give someone a knee slice,
their friends, or something like that.
But beating your friends is a little different. Like you could do that as far as a ranking board to like get better
like
than
Call
your
of Duty.
friends. Well, the difference though is when you do something like that, where it's Call of Duty, where it's like the ability, to shoot or your skill set, that becomes intrinsic. So they gave the example like fighting video games, which is interesting. So it goes over to grappling because intrinsic motivations are games that don't necessarily have an end. You just get better at the thing. You get better at the task.
Yeah.
So the difference though is saying in the beginning when you're developing a game for someone, this is why they say games don't work really well when you give someone all the tools right away.
Yeah, no, it's too overwhelming.
Right. So what they do is they start you out, like they said, I can't remember what game it was, but it was like, they start you out as like a skateboarder game. They don't make you be Tony Hawk right away in the game.
Teach you how to do an
ollie. And also you're trying to do whatever, and you're like, I don't feel like Tony Hawk.
Well, yeah, imagine you were doing a fighting game and they gave you like the boss right away. You'd be like, oh my God,
So they say it's a psychology thing with like, let's say if you start a game as Kratos or Batman, you already have an aura of like, you are this powerful thing that should be going through. Like you could spam the X button.
Toughest guy on my couch.
But you will spam the button and just be hitting pummeling someone and you feel strong. So a lot of games
they actually show you one button at first, and they're like, just do this one button.
But they add
and then they go 2 button. And then by the end of the game, you're just like,
but you're smooth
you're a
with
machine.
You can do all these things. And I thought you'd like that analogy because it's like,
because I love God of War. I love God of
but
War.
it was just
Would it be
interesting.
too much to get a God of War
it.
tattoo?
What's that?
I have to.
What would that look like? I want you a beard tattoo.
A beard tattooed on my face.
No, it's the.
Oh no, his whole body
Okay.
tattoo. No, I'd have to think of something. Hunter, if you're listening, let's figure this out.
You know what you should do?
Because I love God of War.
Why don't across your back you could do the blades? Like
that's too much for me.
Why not?
I'm not an axe on my back kind of
Not
guy.
axe,
the
it's
blades.
It's the blades.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think of something
That'd be
really
kinda
subtle and nerdy. But okay. You were on a roll. Sorry,
No,
I like
this
idea
That's cool.
jumped to me, and I've wanted another tattoo recently, and I can't think of what to do.
God of War is a good one.
And I think God of War could, because I love God of War.
I'm sure there's some people who do some really good tattoos.
Just something
inspirations with.
artsy and fun.
Yeah.
And something that would age well, even if the series starts to suck. You know.
Well, I wanted a God of War tattoo as well. I was
Oh,
very
really?
close to getting it. It wasn't Kratos. It was going to be Mimir's head.
Oh, that would have been good on your hip.
I would put it on my hip.
That would have been
Kratos' head.
awesome.
It's like something subtle. Someone had some really good ones. I'm like, but that was like me really getting into both the games, the God of War and Ragnarok, where I was like, just like a subtle wisdom thing, like something that you're always saying, like
he
it's
spits out some legit wisdom.
yeah, like kind of like having that.
I like
that
Mimir.
person. Oh, he's such
Mimir's
a good voice.
legit.
He's like Odin. He's like, if he tells you the snow is white, he's lying.
Yeah.
But anyways, the idea was getting into any sort of games that if game mechanics are too hard in the beginning, it doesn't bring people in. If it's too easy right away, it gets lethargic right away and gets boring. Like we talk about cheat codes and things like that. But anyways, the mechanics I thought was interesting. Like imagine introducing something to jiu-jitsu and you're just giving them the rough tasks. Like you're doing like, just do this or just do that. And you don't give them any solutions. In the beginning, people are just freaking out and they're getting thrown around and blah, blah, blah. Like let's say a fighting video game. And they go, cool, we'll see you tomorrow. And you're like, I didn't feel like I made an inch on anybody of any sort of progress.
Yeah, you just got your butt kicked.
So there's an interesting balance, and Kid Dale was touching upon this, where he said he does the exact middle ground. So what he does is he teaches a generalized concept. He teaches a technique. But what he said he does is that he doesn't always give the person all the details of the technique. So then he goes, okay, now go out and play this.
Yeah, grab their arm.
Yep.
Push it forward, flip their body.
Or I'm sure he'll demonstrate it, but he won't give the reasons why certain things are working. So then he says what happens is that people eventually will be asking questions like, I can't seem to keep their post out, tucked in, or their foot keeps posting out. Then he reconvenes and fixes the problem that he would have given anyways in the beginning.
But now you have that emotional tie
But now you have the emotional tie to it. Now they felt an actual obstacle, and now they have a solution that overcame that obstacle. So memory-wise, they embrace it a lot more into their psyche versus you giving them the solution right away. So things like Dark Souls, where it's like, if you just made them feel invincible right away and press an X going through it, there's not this level of satisfaction, but you have to balance between how can you give a little resistance and a little bit of joy in the beginning without making it completely overwhelming for anybody.
Here's a hot take.
Yeah.
Okay, so I watched a documentary once that talked about how Western versus Eastern style gaming structures work.
Ooh, I like it.
And it was using Elden Ring as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to bring this back to jiu-jitsu soon, or else people are going to be like,
it's a gaming psychology. It's very applicable.
So Western style gaming had very like chore-based systems where they'd be like, go get the thing and bring it back to me. Go get that thing and then do this other thing with it. And here's your journal that says everything you need to know. As where they said like Eastern-based games were a little more like loose, like Elden Ring, where it's just, here's the game.
Yeah.
And there's a general direction, and you can add more or less to it depending on the game, right? Like Sekiro, that had a little more direction to it, right? It's a little more like pipeline.
Yeah, there's a path.
Yeah. But in Elden Ring, it's kind of like, hey, if you can beat this guy by being a turd and like running up a tree and shooting him and then running down and then running back up the tree, winning's winning, baby. And
I'm going to come hard back into that psychology. I'm not sure in this podcast, but that's going to be blown away by some stuff I got.
So here's what I'm thinking, though. Since your jiu-jitsu school or grappling academy, whatever, I guess whatever way you want to call it,
sure,
is in America, you probably need to also accept the fact that people here who are into doing games and stuff like that, they need like missions, task-based things to like get them like,
I'll give you
get the 5 pigs, you know?
I'll give you a story on that. When I was talking with Horian Gracie, I sound too cool when I said that. I was not talking. He was talking to the group, and Henry Gracie was talking to the group. He said in Brazil, when they taught jiu-jitsu, it was just such a relaxed thing. People would come in, like they just learn the art. They just kind of go through, they come and go. Like it was very relaxed. He said when they came to America and structured jiu-jitsu, say, here's our academy, he said Americans did not relate with that structure. Oh. So when they came up with the organization of Gracie Combatos, he said people go, what? 36, 23 classes, 72 techniques, and get that for a blue belt? Done. I can do that.
Oh.
But it's, so like I said, it's task-based. It's like accomplish the thing, and I can go do this. It's not like, hey, just pop in, learn jiu-jitsu, and then guess what? You'll get better at jiu-jitsu. Because I think a lot of Brazilians, especially the Gracies, already had strong intrinsic value attached with jiu-jitsu, which was a warrior clan. It was like you are getting better so that you don't lose face when you go up against another clan or different art. Like it's this Spartan lifestyle that was not about like accomplish the task and like feel good about me, but Americans wanted the task-based organization of it. But here's the difference, Matt.
The mission-based.
You could tell, Hunter just told me this, and the same way that you probably would say the same thing, was that you get to a point with it where it becomes very intrinsic. You enjoy like the generalized developments of things, but
it's always been intrinsic for me though.
Well, but
I've never given a crap about the belts.
But this is
like
where you started with karate back in the day. You know, it's like you already had an intrinsic feel of like I just want to become a better fighter, or I want to like do this thing. But there's a lot of people who don't have that intrinsic value right away, so you have to start it off with extrinsic goals, and then over time, like this is why everyone says when you get through the belt system, by the time you hit like purple, you kind of just, it falls off a little bit because it became so much of an intrinsic lifestyle for you. You're not so much hunting this like extrinsic thing now.
That is interesting because like, I never really set like goals when I was a kid with karate. I just loved doing it. All I wanted to do is do karate.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's hard remembering why I even want to start. I just knew that like deep down in my soul, I was like, I have to do this. Yeah. And so the minute my parents could afford it, I was like, karate when I was a kid.
I think people with whatever hobbies you want to do, like some people enjoy the extrinsic side of it, and some people just really deep dive the intrinsic thing. Like if nobody ever knew they ever did jiu-jitsu, they just love it because it's a part of their soul and who they do or who they are. So I thought it was very fascinating to say there's some games like, Street Fighter or whatever, people do it to just become either better for themselves or they move up a ranking board, like you said, to beat your friends or case may be like, but it isn't like a marker. It's not like accomplish the thing, accomplish the task, get 50 of these.
Get the Pokemon badge.
Yeah, and then you win at that point. And so people just have different motivations for why they do things. But it comes back to like what you're saying about tasks. Because I think if it's intrinsic and you give people task-based things, like a Dark Souls format, I think people will, get in the grind a little bit, but I think they will be much better street fighters than someone who says, okay, here's a very organized way. Here is the knee slice. Here's the Toriando. And you're like, you're not teaching them how it's all structured from behind the scenes, but they feel powerful and strong. You're hitting them with the spider web. You're hitting them, whatever case may be, like a superhero. You're giving them like the techniques, but it's more static and it's more things that might feel like it falls apart when there's live resistance rolling. So it's like, it's difficult where you give someone the technique, but it's not going to translate well in a live sparring match because there's tasks that need to be accomplished, like you're mentioning. It's not just like I do the technique and they block and go, that was the technique. It didn't work now. Like they don't understand why it worked or why it didn't work. I was ranting there. You got to intervene at some point here.
Should I have like a little light bulb that I turn on? Yeah. Like a little lamp? Yes. I'll just turn a little lamp on here. And
we could both have one.
That's actually not a bad idea if we had a little like,
hey, stop
heads
talking.
Up, dude, you've been talking for 5 minutes.
I'm waiting.
Click. But no. So I don't know. I think it probably depends on the person. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking more and more about how, different people have different motivations. And if you start with the extrinsic motivation as like the big arms, or whatever, that will, if that gets somebody to stay long enough to become a purple belt, that they start developing that intrinsic motivation, that's sweet. But going back to some actionable stuff for our listeners, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I got a list of a couple things here that people could try to help understand, like, what is the task that you're actually trying to complete.
I think we're talking the psychology of tasks, but now we can get in.
I'm going into specifics. I am hard into tactics.
I know
Levi.
you are.
Okay. So when I was using the example of the butterfly sweep, one hand, you just got to grab their arm and make sure their arm can't post out. And then the other thing you need to do is lift their other half of their body up using typically your leg, right? So as you're practicing these techniques and whatnot in class, some ideas, and assuming that your school is cool and doesn't mind if you deviate a little bit to try something out real quick, try doing the opposite of what your instructor recommended to accomplish the task and just kind of see what happens. In this case, it would be grab maybe the opposite arm but use the same leg you were using before and see what happens. And if you're butterfly sweeping them, they're just going to post out because you just left their whole side of their body open. But that'll help you really learn like what's going on.
Sometimes I'll tell people when they say, should I put my foot like this or like this? Like crossing your feet in triangle choke. Sometimes like this or this. I'm like, try either one. Like see
what happens.
I prefer this, but now cross your feet and see how that feels. Does that feel strong? Does that feel good? And it's like, oh, not as strong. I'm like, well, then maybe prefer the other one. Like that's experience. But I think sometimes, feeling it yourself of doing the opposite, I think will give you more appreciation of,
especially if when you're really new and you're trying really like basic things, but you're like really trying to get this down. Yeah. Just if you try to roll someone left versus right, you might find out right away why that doesn't work. And that'll help you remember it.
What if I hyper flex their arm instead of hyper extend?
Just bend it down.
Then you create
a bicep slicer.
That's true. I know. It's like, interesting.
So my next one I had here was look for the general themes of many different techniques from a position that all have the same outcome. Using the sweep analogy again, all butterfly sweeps.
Categorization.
They have all the same things. So then you can go, okay, as long as I trap the arm some way, I'm probably going to pull the sweep off. And there's better ways to do it than others, but it's up to you to explore that. The third item I had here is don't be afraid to do some FYJJ, some fuck your jujitsu.
We're a family channel.
I've been marking them explicit lately.
Okay.
Because that has been a huge help to me in understanding a concept.
Okay,
we're 31 minutes in.
I had to.
But that has been a huge help to me.
Do you want to give a quick definition of that for people who aren't as familiar with?
So it's kind of like a drilling style of, I guess like you could call it a style of drills would be a better way to put that Rob Bernanke really popularized and invented at his school, where you don't have there's no winning these drills. They're not like you try to get the back and you try to do this other thing. It's more so, okay, you have a constraint on you and the other person has less constraints, and your goal is you're kind of helping each other, but you both get a benefit out of it.
I like the sweep one. Like an open guard, it's like you just can't fall over.
Yeah.
The other person has all the tools basically available to make you fall over.
Yeah, so to explain that one, right? It's bottom person, their goal is to sweep the top person given a specific scenario. And the top person's goal is just to not get swept, but they can't disengage, or you can only disengage to a certain degree where you can strip one grip or something. And if the bigger the skill disparity, the bigger the skill gap between the two of you, the more you want to give them. The less of a skill gap between the two of you, the less you want to give them to start from. Maybe they start with just one grip. But you're not like passing their guard if they screw up. You are just trying not to get swept. And then that way, the bottom person gets to practice a ton of sweeping without any fear of something going wrong. And the top person gets to get really good at not getting swept without actually using a specific technique. They're just surfing. They're figuring it out. They're kind of like laying on the other person in weird ways that they aren't getting swept. And that's, I think, awesome. That's how you get really good at being hard to sweep, but also really good at sweeping. And that has made so many light bulb moments for me, especially with butterfly sweeps, because that's an easy one to do FYJJ with. But yeah, that was been really great at understanding the concepts of a spot. So that's probably where those were kind of like my top 3 items I had for actions.
Nice. Well, like I said, I think, would you recommend people focus on task-based stuff almost right away? I know we were just talking about techniques, or do you think it's something that amplifies practitioners who already have a technique concept? Like,
I think you start with techniques.
Here's the butterfly sweep. Here's the Sumigaishi sweep. Here's the, whatever. But then now once you understand the skeleton underneath each one, then in the heat of the moment, you can still do your pathway, but you'll amplify it in certain aspects because you understand that this is an important aspect of all sweeps.
I kind of, and keep in mind, this is just my opinion on it. I think what's helped me the most, what was successful for me, and this wasn't intentional, just kind of how it played out. Halfway to blue is when I started doing that kind of swap.
Halfway to blue?
Yeah, when I was like 2-stripe white belt.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, halfway to blue,
yes.
I started realizing, okay, so I'm learning these techniques. I'm still going to keep learning techniques, but the general concept of things started to connect a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when this idea starts kicking in. But the big part is you have to actually engage it. If you just sit there idly in class and just go, okay, now I'm going to try the thing, it won't come to you as soon, or maybe not even at all.
Sure.
This is something you actively have to be like looking at techniques. You have to go, okay, what is this theme between all these techniques? You got to be reviewing it. You have to try things. You have to have things fail. And then eventually you'll go, okay, now I know that in this scenario, I can do this XYZ thing versus this other one. But it just comes from, honestly, getting the reps into.
I really like the idea of tasks or categorizing certain movements or actions within a grappling scenario or fighting scenario, because a sweep, for example, when you define it, you could say, well, I don't have a definition in front of me, so it's off the top of my head, but like, putting someone onto their back.
Yeah.
From your back or whatever.
Reversing the position.
Reversing the position. Well, to me, because there's always so much innovation when it comes to grappling and jiu-jitsu and martial arts, hopefully, that techniques and tactics will change. You will find more efficient ways to accomplish the thing over time. So instead of trying to focus too much on the technique, you accomplish like what's the core task that we're trying to do, and people will find innovative ways to adapt over time.
I like that.
Because I think as a practitioner, once you understand this is generalized tasks, like chokes, for example, is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that here, at some point, someone figures out a unique way to choke, like with a triangle choke or whatever. Like buggy choke is a good example, where that kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. Now a lot of people are trying to utilize it. Well, that wasn't part of any sort of 1980s, 90s jiu-jitsu curriculum. But then someone decided to explore out of the realm with this concept of here's how you get a strangle. Well, how can we try something unique or different? This is when in gaming cultures, they describe it as the honers versus the innovators. Honers will take one thing and they'll deep dive like a hard triangle choke or rear naked choke, and they'll go super deep with it. Innovators will take that concept, go, how can we find a unique pathway to accomplish this goal? So the interesting part is that grappling arts and every avenue of human existence has to have both. You have to have people who are the perfectionists, like a Hodger Gracie with his cross collars, and then you have to find people who are like, how can we reinvent this cross collar? It's actually funny. I saw this joke video the other day that I actually shared on my Facebook. That was like these group of guys are all drunk and they're like waking over from a hangover. And some guys going, guys, we reinvented the wheel last night. Everyone's all upset. Like there's all this quantum physics, like math. Like how the fuck did we do that? And they're upset and they're having like the White House call them and things like that. We're not going to the White House. We're going to have brunch. And they're just like joking around, but just sort of like this idea that some people will have to carve new pathways for the sport to evolve, and some other people have to create depth of it to see really how deep you can go with one thing.
I think it's both innovation.
That's what I'm saying. You need with both. You need
also,
both.
I think almost most human inventions have happened serendipitously.
Yeah.
Most people didn't just like
most chocolate fell into a batter.
Oh, really?
They're like, oh, this tastes really good.
It's kind of like there's time and time again though that like many of our greatest inventions were accidents. You know?
Well, think about like if a white belt's
we're getting a bit long.
A white belt's stumbling around and grabbing stuff, like grabbing like legs, and doesn't know what to do from the bottom. And some white belt's like, oh, here's a thing. I'm choking someone out with my legs. And all these black belts are going, that's stupid. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
But yet it kind of like went off to the side, and some black belts that were looking at it going, actually, that's interesting.
Yeah, legs are strong.
Because my example I gave in class a while ago was how we all focus on, I'm going to get rant here for a second, like techniques and tactics. You got to do the takedown. You got to do the guard pass. You got to get this side control and mount to do the cross collar and the arm bar. That's jiu-jitsu. Well, guess what? In 2011 and 12, lest we forget, we all witnessed the power of the berimbolo. Someone decides to use this tactic where we're both standing. I sit down, sweep you, invert, and take your back. Well, guess what? We all enjoyed winning a lot more than we did about tactics. So guess what? Everybody was double guard pulling. Everybody was trying to do the
Bumping
berimbolo
butts.
to
Bumping butts.
but like everyone was trying to do that new tactic because they valued winning over the traditional scene. Like everyone's looking at each other. No, that's not jiu-jitsu. But yet you go to these big competitions. Like here's a super effective solution.
People berimbolo like crazy.
Yeah, how many people are sitting there standing by tradition while this other person sits and flips you and takes your back? And it's like, well, that isn't what Jigoro Kano taught us, or Elio Gracie, or the Gracies. Like, it's so stupid. It's just, you have to have ways where you have to stand on the shoulders of giants, right, of innovations, but you have to have people with new eyes and different eyes to look at a situation. I mean, that's why I like how therapists work. You have two people that are conflicting, and you have someone who's a third-party perspective to look in it, and they're seeing it with different filters, different eyes. Jiu-jitsu schools and any other school have this lens already on them. This is what the one guy from BJJ Globetrotters talked about, where jiu-jitsu people have the parasite, where they're comfortable being on their back. They're comfortable working from their closed guard. Like, he's not meaning like you can't use those as tactics, but he said you're too comfortable. You should be finding ways to build up, to sweep, to wrestle up, and sort of default. And that's a separate tangent. But this idea is that we need people to constantly look for ways to innovate, but the core pathway of how grappling and jiu-jitsu work is still very much task-based. That was the whole rant Danaher gave of like Joe Rogan was the 4 steps of jiu-jitsu. Like, here's what you have to do. And those kind of concepts, though. But it's funny, when he gave that framework, he immediately looked at Rogan going, okay, now where leg locks fit into that framework. Like, he gave a traditional view and saying how leg locks broke that framework of grappling and saying, like, where do they fit in? They're being very effective, but they don't fit in the traditional framework of jiu-jitsu.
See, that's, I think, where we were talking about this the other day. I won't go deep into the conversation because we're running along here. And plus, we need Luke here if we're going to really talk about the diagram.
We should just get
the
him
diagram.
In. We'll just do the diagram of death.
You know what? Actually, okay. It reminded me. Have you ever seen that
that
guy who makes the funny videos? Who he charts out stuff, and it'll be like, you know, how crazy a girl is, how many cats she has. But he's like very professory. Yeah. And Luke was reminding me of that when he was doing that. I was just like, all right, so here's what you got. You got the craziness level here. You got the number of cats. There's an inflection point right there, guys. That's what we're trying to hit.
This where it's like she's hot, but she's not crazy. What are that? That is a man. You're dating a man.
The guy's got like glasses and stuff, and he's like looks very professional. It's awesome.
Yeah,
But hold on. I was gonna do a thing here.
I'd say we had an hour and a half at the studio that Luke was going over his concept of
it was cool
jiu-jitsu skills.
The diagram.
We all just got over that chalkboard the whole time, just looking at it.
It was cool. We had a lot of really cool thoughts. It sprung a lot of ideas in my head, but it made me realize too, like how some people. So you say, how do leg locks fit into jiu-jitsu? It's like, you know, sometimes labels become limiting. So it's like, if it doesn't fit into this, like if the general consensus is people were like, we don't want leg locks, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of like how they are on the gi, right? General consensus. Most people aren't really jiggy with them, it seems.
Sure.
Then you go, okay, well, that label's limiting, so we have to go to the broader topic, right? And so we go, you know what's cool though is winning, and leg locks help you win. So, and it isn't a jerk move, right? Like you can apply it with, you know, time and care.
No, Tim Ferriss said he competed in some sort of kickboxing tournament, something like that he found some stipulation rule set that he
pushed people
out.
Yeah.
But he won a kickboxing event.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Wasn't it something else?
I don't know what
like a Tai Chi
it's
thing or
like push hand type stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the spirit of it. And I can get into the next one, but we talk about rule sets and competitions.
Oh yeah, let's save that for our next episode.
It's just tasks. We're accomplishing a task. So once you understand jiu-jitsu is that way, it's going to amplify all your techniques and knowledge.
Makes it way easier to remember what to do too. Yep. My goodness, does it make things easy?
Yep, categorize.
Jordan's been helping me with that with wrestling. Just get the leg, dude.
Yeah, just
all right. Whatever you got to do to get the leg.
About it too much.
Get the leg. All right, and then I start coming up with the setups.
I need to figure out how to make his saying T-shirt or whatever. He says, "Knowledge is death."
No, knowledge is weakness.
That's weakness.
Yeah, that was weakness.
That sounds cool. But yes, knowledge is weakness.
I thought it was funny. I like knowledge is weakness.
Knowledge is weakness.
No, I love it. It's so funny.
It's funny that I said how many times have your Princeton professors negated you on that one? And he goes, most of the time issues I saw in the classroom was because of that. Like it's too much. Like you have to, you know, burn the ships. That's his whole Princeton thing.
Knowledge is weakness. I think that's what his old coach used to say.
Yeah.
I love that saying.
Knowledge is weakness.
It's so funny because when you do jujitsu or grappling of any type, like that, makes so much sense when the minute you hear it, you laugh and you go, I know exactly where this guy was going with that. And there was so much wisdom in that one stupid saying.
Yeah.
I love it.
It makes total sense.
And it's funny too. I think that's another good part about it. But okay, so we are at the end of the episode here. Everyone, thank you so much. I know we kind of jumped around a little bit, but I thought it was a fun
shocker.
Yeah, watch out.
You guys know what you signed up for.
But I thought it was fun though, because it did all talk about tasks, general tasks over specific moves, the value of both of them, thinking about how you might want to structure your own training. We had a couple like things you can actually do to try to increase your understanding of a general task within a specific kind of area or move set.
Yeah.
And we also talked about video games a little bit, which is sometimes fun.
Go figure.
If you have any ideas for my Kratos tattoo, or not Kratos, my God of War tattoo,
just pulling that up right now.
please send them in to info@thegrapplingpodcast.com. I'm all ears, and that'd be actually pretty cool if someone designed something. Maybe, I'm not above people using GPTs and stuff to design something cool. But no, if you enjoyed this episode, you found it helpful, the best thing you can do is honestly share it with a friend. Give us 5 stars, hit us with those likes, those types of things.
Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into the Grappling Podcast.